I slammed the door to my apartment so hard the cheap frame rattled, sending a puff of dust from the ceiling like some mocking snowfall. My face burned, not just from the scar tissue that twisted the left side into a perpetual grimace, but from the humiliation that seared deeper than the fire ever had. 27 years old and another audition down the drain. "You're talented, Peter," the casting director had said, her eyes flicking to my cheek like it was a typo on my resume. "But the role needs relatability, you understand?" Yeah, I understood. I was the monster in the mirror, the one nobody wanted to look at too long. The apartment was a shoebox in Brooklyn, walls thin as regrets, with a kitchenette that smelled eternally of burnt toast and the neighbor's weed. Rent was a steal because the landlord pitied me, or so I imagined. I collapsed onto the sagging couch, the springs groaning like my own bones after a day of forcing smiles at the coffee shop where I slung lattes to hipsters who tipped in pity coins. My scar, a ragged map from a childhood house fire that claimed my parents and left me orphaned and marked, was my constant companion. It pulled at my eyelid, making my left eye droop like I was always half asleep, half defeated. Kids stared on the subway. Dates ghosted after one glance. And auditions? They were funerals for dreams I buried weekly. That night, the frustration boiled over. I paced the tiny space, knocking over a stack of headshots. Me airbrushed to hell, but still the scar loomed like a shadow that wouldn't fade. Why even try? I muttered to the empty room, my voice echoing off the peeling paint. Internal voices warred, one screaming to give up, curl into the invisibility of a 9-to-5 drone. The other quieter, whispering that acting was the only fire left in me, the one that didn't destroy. But who was I kidding? The world saw the scar first, the talent a distant second. If that my phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, my on again, off again, whatever. We'd met at the coffee shop. She was a barista too, with freckles like stardust and a laugh that cut through my gloom. "Hey, heard about the audition? Want to talk?" I typed back, "Nah, I'm good." "Lie." She replied instantly. "Peter, you gotta stop torturing yourself. Maybe acting isn't for people like you. It's brutal out there. People like me." The words stung like fresh ash. Sarah meant well, or so I told myself, but her doubt was a mirror to my own. She'd encouraged me at first, pushed me to auditions, but lately, her words carried edges. "Why not something behind the scenes? You're smart." Translation: hide the face, hide the freak. I tossed the phone aside and stared at the ceiling crack that spiderwebbed like my scar. Day to day was a grind of invisibility. Mornings. Wake to the alarm's shrill splash water on my face, avoid the mirror. Commute. Head down on the F train, feeling eyes skim over me like a bad headline. Work. Double shot, extra foam. Smile through the pull of skin. Ignore the flinch when customers met my gaze. Evenings, rehearse lines in the apartment, voice booming against walls that closed in. Weekends. Auditions, where directors nodded politely, but their notes always circled back to presence. My presence was a distraction, they implied. The scar shouted louder than my monologues. One particularly brutal week, I landed a callback for indie film, a role as a troubled veteran, something with depth. I prepped for days, memorizing lines until they pulsed in my sleep. But at the read-through, the producer pulled me aside. "Look, kid, you've got chops. But the scar, it's too much. Audiences need to empathize, not get pulled out." I nodded, swallowed the bile, and left with my tail between my legs. That night, back in the apartment, I punched the wall, splitting a knuckle. Blood smeared the paint, a red echo of my frustration. Why fight a world that boxed me in as the villain, the sidekick, the pity case? Internal dialogue raged, "You're broken, Peter, accept it." But beneath a spark, what if the scar isn't the end? Nah, delusion. Sarah came over that weekend, her presence a balm and a blade. We cooked pasta in the cramped kitchen, elbows bumping, her laughter filling the voids. But as we ate on the couch, she set down her fork. "Peter, I love your passion, but have you thought about therapy? For the self-doubt?" Her eyes softened, but I saw the doubt there too. "You're amazing, but the industry is shallow. Maybe pivot to writing scripts? You could shine without all this." She gestured vaguely at my face. It hit like a slap. She was encouraging in her way, but it felt like surrender. "You think I can't make it because of this?" I touched the scar, rough under my fingers. She hesitated. "I think it's unfair, but yeah. The world sucks. We argued, voices rising until she left in tears. Alone again, I felt the weight of underestimation, not just from her, from everyone, from myself. Weeks blurred into a haze of routine. I quit the coffee shop gigs, took a data entry job in a windowless office, typing numbers that meant nothing. The apartment felt smaller, my dreams shrinking to fit. I stopped rehearsing, let headshots gather dust. One evening, after a day of staring at screens until my good eye blurred, I wandered the streets, rain slicking the sidewalks. Brooklyn pulsed around me, couples laughing, street performers drawing crowds. I envied their ease, their unmarked skins. That's when it happened. The switch. Not gradual, not built over therapy sessions or pep talks, sudden as a lightning strike in a clear sky. I ducked into a bookstore to escape the downpour, shaking water from my coat. The place was cozy, shelves groaning with stories, the air thick with paper and possibility. I browsed aimlessly, fingers trailing spines, until I pulled a slim volume. A memoir by a burn survivor who'd become a motivational speaker. Idle curiosity, but as I flipped pages in a quiet corner, a sentence leaped out. The fire didn't scar me. It forged me. I am not despite my wounds, I am because of them. It hit like a gut punch. Time froze. The rain hammered the window, but inside my world cracked open. Forged, not scarred. In that instant, epiphany flooded. All these years I'd hidden behind the mark, let it define limits. But what if it was the key? What if embracing it, raw, visible, unapologetic, was the role I'd been auditioning for all along? No more airbrushing, no more apologies. The switch flipped. I wouldn't change for the world. I'd make the world see me. Decision crystallized in seconds. I bought the book, stepped into the storm, but the rain felt like baptism. No more underestimation. I'd act not in spite of the scar, but with it as my truth. The change was immediate, drastic. That night, back in the apartment, I tore through my closet, tossing clothes that hid me. High collars, hoodies. I stood before the mirror, really looked for the first time in years. The scar twisted from temple to jaw, pink and puckered, pulling my mouth into a wry half-smile. This is me, I whispered. Internal shift from enemy to ally. No more day-to-day drudgery. This was war on complacency. Next morning, I quit the data entry job via email, heart-pounding. Freedom tasted like terror, but I dove in. I signed up for an improv class at a local theater. Not the glossy ones, but a gritty community spot where misfits gathered. First session, nerves electric. I walked in, scar exposed under harsh lights. The instructor, a wiry woman named Lena with tattoos snaking her arms, eyed me. New blood. What's your story? I hesitated then, burned as a kid. Scarred for life. Here to own it. She nodded, no pity. Good, use it. Classes became my forge. Every night I pushed. Improv scenes where I wove the scar into characters. A pirate with a map on his face, a detective whose mark was his badge. Laughter erupted, not at me, but with me. Dedication surged. Mornings I journaled internal monologues, turning self-doubt into dialogue. Afternoons, vocal exercises in the apartment, voice booming unashamed. Evenings, class where sweat and vulnerability mixed. One sequence stands out, a partner exercise mirroring emotions. My pair, a quiet guy named Tom, mimicked my half-smile. It's powerful, he said after. Makes everything you say land harder. Encouragement unexpected. Tom became a friend, doubting at first. The biz is tough, man. But watching my fire, he shifted. You're unstoppable now. I auditioned again, but differently. No hiding. For a theater production of a modern Frankenstein adaptation, I read for the creature. I am not monster, I delivered, voice raw, scar catching the light. The director paused. That's it. You've got the pain in your bones. Call back, then roll. Rehearsals were grueling. Hours blocking scenes, embodying rejection, turning my personal hell into art. Mornings blurred into nights. I ate takeout over scripts, body aching from emotive gestures. One rehearsal I broke. A scene of isolation, tears streaming down the scarred side mixing with makeup. Cast applauded. Effort etched into me, calluses on feet from pacing, voice hoarse from projection. But each push built momentum. Sarah reached out months later. Heard you're in a play. Congrats. We met for coffee. She stared. You look different. Not the scar, me. Confidence radiated. I flipped the script, I said. She smiled, genuine. I was wrong to doubt. You're inspiring. Her encouragement came late, but it closed a loop. The run was electric. Opening night, stage lights hot as flames, audience a sea of faces. I stepped out, scar bared, lines flowing like truth. No pity claps, real applause, thunderous. But success wasn't the roar. It was internal, a quiet blaze. Months later, the play wrapped, but momentum carried. I booked a commercial. Irony, my face selling resilience for a burn cream ad. Then a guest spot on a web series, playing a mentor with hard-won wisdom. The apartment felt less cramped. I saved for a better one, but kept the old couch as a reminder. One crisp autumn evening, I stood on a Brooklyn bridge, city lights twinkling like possibilities. A kid approached, maybe 10, with a fresh scar on his arm from some accident. "Hey, mister, does it hurt?" He pointed to my face. I knelt. Used to. Now it's my strength. He nodded, eyes wide, then scampered off. I watched him go, wind whipping my coat. No fanfare, no headlines. Just me, whole, gazing at the horizon. The scar pulled as I smiled, fully unreserved. In that moment, reflective, I knew. Limitations are illusions we script ourselves. Embrace the fire and it forges wings. Hope endures, quiet as a heartbeat, urging us all to flip our own switches.